A big boy did it and ran away. It's a Scottish saying much used by young children, including myself, when we've done something wrong, but we're afraid to admit it. It's also immortalised in the wonderful novel by the Scottish writer Christopher Brookmyre. And I'm sure around the world, we all have a saying to mark that guilty feeling that when we do something that is deemed wrong or bad. The trouble is, simple life lessons tend to stay with us and get under our skin, and it doesn't help us to be proactive to do the right or good things. Climate change is a very real example of this, and climate anxiety is now a recognised condition, with people feeling helpless or overwhelmed by the scale of the problem that we have created. Our news feeds are full of terrifying stories of wildfires, floods, heat waves, droughts, and many more symptoms of our poor treatment of the earth. Climate anxiety is as real as climate change, so we need to address these two issues in parallel if we are to make the changes that we need. We've already hit Earth Overshoot Day. That happened back in July 29th of this year, giving just 100 days to COP26. And many people have taken to social media to share good news stories and projects from around the world and how they have started to tackle the climate crisis and to move back the date. This Move Back the Date initiative is a great idea. It shows what has been done by people across the globe and goes some way towards balancing those frightening stories that we see filling our news feeds. The problem is we rarely tend to see these on TV or mainstream channels, so it tends to be only small interest groups that see the information. So I think we're missing the mark. We're shy about our achievements and we are focusing on the wrong, guilt-laden things. It's time to break free and it's time to do something different. From early in my career, I discovered the theory of doing better things. And I've embedded that thinking into everything I've done as much as is possible. So the idea of innovating and changing at how we look at problems is for me about looking at new possibilities and new approaches. Often solutions come from odd places, and when I was considering what I could do on a personal level to impact the climate crisis, I was in truth overwhelmed. I thought possibly it was silly that one person could make such an impact on an enormous problem. I walked miles as I pondered the issue and what I might do to help. After all, if a schoolgirl named Greta can contribute to climate change by shifting some thinking, then why couldn't I? Solutions were far and few between because I was looking for a revolution and a seismic change. And of course, I was looking at the problem all wrong. Often I find a solution, I find it helps to stop. Stop thinking about it, stop reading about it, stop watching it, and just stop and allow your brain time to assimilate information and for your second brain, your tummy, stomach, to cogitate, ruminate, and to solve. So on a wet Saturday morning, sitting at my kitchen table, an idea came to me. At first, it was pretty simple, but so simple, I dismissed it and pushed it to the back of my brain. Sometimes, however, even simple ideas just won't go away. And this one kept nagging, kept returning, and kept coming back to me and said, make me a thing. This thing was to become the National Green Standard. But before I tell you more about the National Green Standard, let me tell you about my journey towards creating this ESG tool. After a few false starts in my career, I was led into organisational development by way of Investors and People, or IIP, as many people know it commonly. After that, into the EFQM Foundation model, and later still, I worked for a number of large environmental charities and the work around the standards and operations that they did. It was during this time that I could see that there were gaps in how organisations and charities tried to capture their environmental impact and indeed their social impact. I was closely involved with the growth of Investors and People and its development as an improvement tool. And I trained as an assessor for IIP and EFQM, and my knowledge of standards and how they operated then stood me in good stead. Indeed, while it keeps Scotland beautiful, I created the Environmental Excellence Award for them, applying those principles that I knew worked from other standards and had had the privilege to work with before I then moved on to ESG and what kind of approach that might look like. Back then to my kitchen table and that nagging idea. My robust background in organisational development, the use of standards, my ability to research, to create and do better things. The pull was becoming irresistible, so the National Green Standard was born. The thing is, having a newborn infant around you is quite a shock to the system. And as a woman who'd not experienced motherhood, this was a shock to the system. This baby needed fed daily. It needed refinements, it needed more research, it needed testing, and it needed nurturing, until at last it was a thing. Relax, I thought. It's done. We have an ESG toolkit. The world will devour it. The climate change will be reversed, and we will all be saved. Not quite. The world, it seemed, wasn't ready, or maybe they just couldn't admit that if something wasn't born out of endless committees, government-sponsored, or created by an obscure quango, then clearly it couldn't have merit. Of course, there are a few organisations out there who are forward-thinking enough to have used a standard to great effect. However, that's old thinking. So today I'm here to tell you about the National Green Standard and its flexible criterion. It's used for free if you wish, and there's a toolkit on the UNHS website. And it's applied to organisations from 2 people to any number thereafter. The assessment process is based on a points-based system with 1,000 points distributed across the 3 principles of being environmentally sound, economically viable, and socially responsible. Each principle has a set of criteria, and organisations are assessed using an online questionnaire, interviews, and research about their organisation via the web and other publicly available documents. The standard is awarded on green, bronze, and gold levels, depending on the number of points achieved. However, gold is reserved for organisations that demonstrate not only a high score, but have exceptional effort around the principles that the standard purports. So, what are you waiting for? Let's change the climate emergency. Let's change it to climate recovery. Let's use an ESG approach, and let's make this 2020s a decade of our last chance for Mother Nature to recover so that she can go on supporting us to live on this beautiful planet Earth. Let's make the big boy who did it and ran away stand and take responsibility, and let's see the National Green Standard be your guide for positive change.